My sister stood in my living room with one hand pressed to her cheek, tears running down her face, and screamed, "He touched me!" I was 8 months pregnant, barefoot, and so shocked I actually forgot to breathe. Across the room, my husband, Ethan, looked like the floor had disappeared under him. His face went white. My mother dropped the spoon she was holding. My father froze by the doorway like someone had turned him into stone. And me? I just stood there staring at my sister Lauren, because I knew exactly what she was trying to do. What she didn't know was that 3 days earlier, I had hidden a small camera on the top shelf of our living room bookcase. I had not told anyone. Not my husband, not my mother, not even Lauren, who had been acting like my closest friend for the last 4 months. Ever since my pregnancy started making her suddenly sweet, suddenly helpful, suddenly everywhere. I had put that camera up because something in my gut would not settle. Lauren had been smiling too much, a little too careful, a little too interested in my husband's schedule, my appointments, my moods, my medical records, and my inheritance. And now, with one shaking finger pointed at Ethan, she was trying to turn my whole family against him in one sentence. "He grabbed my arm," she sobbed. "I came over to check on Maya, and he just lost control." Ethan took one step forward and stopped himself. "That is not what happened." Lauren cried harder. "Don't, Lee." My mother rushed toward her. "Baby, sit down. Tell me what he did." That was the moment my heart sank, because my mother had already chosen Lauren's side. Again, I looked from one face to another, and all I could think was, this is how she planned it. This is exactly how she planned it. My name is Maya Bennett, and if you had told me a year ago that my own sister would try to break apart my marriage while I was carrying my first baby, I would have laughed in your face. Lauren and I had never been identical, but we had always been close enough that people called us best friends. She was older than me by 4 years, loud where I was quiet, sharp where I was soft, the kind of woman who could walk into a room and make people believe she belonged there. Growing up, she was the one who taught me how to curl my hair, how to talk back to rude teachers, how to act confident even when I felt small. Because of that, I trusted her more than anyone, more than friends, more than coworkers. Sometimes, embarrassingly, even more than myself. When I met Ethan, Lauren was the first person I told. She loved him at first, or at least she acted like she did. Ethan was calm, steady, the opposite of every chaotic man Lauren had ever dated. He worked in logistics for a medical supply company, wore plain shirts, laughed softly, and remembered tiny things like the way I liked my toast and the fact that I couldn't stand strong perfume when I was tired. He was not flashy. He was not loud. He was not the kind of man who tried to win over a room, but he was the kind of man who came home with groceries when I was sick, who sat beside me in silence when I lost my grandmother, and who held my hair back when morning sickness hit so hard I cried from embarrassment. I married him because he felt like peace. That should have been the end of it. But then I got pregnant, and something changed in Lauren. At first, it was sweet. Too sweet, really. She started calling me every morning to ask how I slept. She bought me sour candy and soft blankets, and those ugly pregnancy pillows that cost too much and somehow saved my back. She came to doctor appointments, took notes, made soup, and told everyone she was basically living at my place now because Maya needs support. Everyone thought it was beautiful. My mother cried the first time Lauren rubbed lotion on my feet and said, "I just want to make sure my sister has an easy pregnancy." But that wasn't all she was doing. The first thing that bothered me was small. Ethan asked me one evening if I wanted to go out for dinner, just the two of us, and I said yes. We were both looking forward to it. He had even found a quiet restaurant with soft lighting and a booth I could sit in comfortably. But when he came home, Lauren was there before I was, standing in my kitchen with a tray of iced tea, saying, "Oh, I didn't know you were planning anything. Maya got tired, so I thought I'd stay with her." He looked disappointed, but he smiled and said, "No problem. Maybe next week." Then next week, something else happened, and the week after that. Lauren always seemed to arrive at the exact wrong moment, or the exact right moment, depending on what she wanted. If Ethan wanted to talk to me after work, Lauren would suddenly remember a story that had to be told immediately. If Ethan brought up baby names, Lauren would say, "Actually, Maya and I were talking about that earlier, and she doesn't really like your ideas." If Ethan asked me whether I wanted to go to his mother's house for Sunday dinner, Lauren would frown and say, "Are you sure that's a good idea? You've been stressed. He should understand." It was never loud at first, never obvious. That was the clever part. Lauren didn't attack. She edited. She trimmed little pieces off every conversation until Ethan started looking like the villain, and she started looking like my guardian angel. She even began making comments about my inheritance, which I found strange but didn't fully understand at the time. When my grandmother passed, she left me the lake house. It was old, beautiful, and worth more than most people in our family realized, because the land had grown valuable over the years. Grandma had always said I was the only one who visited her without asking for something in return. She left the house to me, along with a small trust fund meant for the baby I would eventually have. Lauren had laughed when the lawyer read the will. "Must be nice," she said at the time, her voice light, her smile tight. I had felt awkward and had tried to soften it. "It's just the house." But she hadn't looked at me. She had looked at Ethan. That was the first time I noticed the way her face changed when she looked at my husband. Not jealous exactly. Not yet, but interested. Like a person studying a locked door. Still, I ignored it. Because family is family, and I was pregnant, and pregnant women like to believe everyone around them means well. I wanted peace so badly I started making excuses for things that should have alarmed me. Lauren told me Ethan was working too late? I believed her. Lauren said my husband forgot to tell me about his business dinner. I assumed it was an honest mistake. Lauren said I looked too tired after being around Ethan and maybe needed a break from stress. I considered it, and the worst part was, my mother agreed with her more often than I expected. My mother, Diane Bennett, has always had a soft spot for Lauren. Maybe because Lauren was easier to brag about. She was louder, more polished, better at making a good impression. I was the one who stayed home more. The one who got too emotional. The one who never quite learned how to impress people on command. So when Lauren started saying things like, "Maya needs more family support," and "Ethan doesn't seem to understand what pregnancy does to a woman," my mother nodded like she'd discovered wisdom. Ethan noticed, of course. He wasn't stupid. One night, after Lauren had left early with some excuse about a headache, he stood in the kitchen while I washed dishes and said quietly, "Has your sister always been like this?" I dried my hands and frowned. "Like what?" He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Like she's trying to get in the middle of everything." I laughed a little, but it came out strained. "You're imagining things?" He looked at me for a long moment, and I could tell he wanted to say more, but he didn't. That was Ethan's way. He did not fight to be heard. He waited until people were ready to hear the truth. That should have made me trust him more. Instead, because I was tired and hormonal and scared and drowning in everyone else's opinions, I did the thing I regret most. I started listening to Lauren. Not all at once, just little by little. At first, it was harmless. She would say things like, "I'm just worried he's putting too much pressure on you," or, "I don't think he's being honest about his work schedule." And I'd roll my eyes, but the words stayed in my head. Then one evening, she told me, very casually, "He's been getting strange calls." I looked up from the couch. "What kind of calls?" She shrugged. "I don't know. He steps outside every time his phone rings." That seems secretive. I wanted to defend him, but I remembered that he had been acting distant that week. Not cold, just distracted. And once doubt gets in, it breeds. By the next morning, I was watching Ethan differently. That is the danger nobody warns you about. Once you start looking for proof of something bad, your mind will happily build a house out of shadows. Then Lauren gave me the first real crack in my trust. She came over while Ethan was in the shower and said, "I don't want to upset you, but I think you should see this." She handed me her phone. On the screen was a text message. It was from Ethan's number. I read it once, then again, and my stomach dropped. It said, "You should know Maya has been asking a lot of questions about where you are at night. She's getting suspicious." I blinked at the screen. "What is this?" Lauren sighed, as if she hated being the one to deliver bad news. "He sent that to me by mistake, I think." My voice went thin. "That makes no sense." "I know." She touched my arm gently. "I just didn't want you blindsided." Ethan came out of the shower just then, towel around his neck. and I looked at him differently for the first time in my marriage. He saw the phone in my hand and frowned. "What's that?" I stood up too quickly and felt a wave of dizziness. "Did you send Lauren a message about me?" His brow furrowed. No. Lauren's eyes widened in a perfect little performance of concern. Maybe it was meant for someone else? Ethan took her phone from me, read the text, and then his face changed. Not guilty, not nervous, confused. "Lauren," he said slowly, "this is not from my phone." She blinked. "It literally says your number." He reached for his own phone, opened his messages, and turned the screen toward us. "Because you copied the number." Silence. The room went very still. Lauren gave a tiny laugh like he had made a joke. "Why would I do that?" His eyes held hers. "That's what I'd like to know." I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. "Ethan, what is she talking about?" He turned to me. "Maya, I didn't send that. Someone is trying to make it look like I did." Lauren folded her arms. "So now I'm some sort of liar?" "No," Ethan said, still calm. "I'm saying someone is manipulating this." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But Lauren was crying now, which made everything worse because my mother hates when people cry and immediately starts defending them. She had come in during the argument and was already asking Ethan why he was being so harsh. He stood there with his hair still wet from the shower, trying to explain, and I could see the exhaustion in his face. And because I was scared, because I didn't want this pregnancy to become a war zone, I did the cowardly thing. I told him to let it go. He looked at me like I had slapped him. Lauren looked triumphant for half a second before she hid it. That was when she knew she could push further. After that, the lies got bolder. Ethan supposedly forgot to pick up prenatal vitamins. He supposedly said he needed space. He supposedly told my cousin that pregnancy is making Maya dramatic. Every time I asked him, he denied it. Every time, Lauren had some explanation. "He's embarrassed. He doesn't want to fight in front of you. He probably just forgot." And because my body was changing every day, because I was tired and emotional and overthinking everything, I started believing maybe I was the problem. The worst night came 3 weeks before the confrontation. I had fallen asleep on the couch. When I woke up, Lauren was sitting beside me with her hand on my arm. "You need to be careful," she said softly. I rubbed my eyes. "What happened?" She looked toward the kitchen where Ethan was unloading groceries. "I heard him on the phone earlier. He was talking about the house." My chest tightened. "What house?" "Yours, Grandma's house." She lowered her voice. "He said once the baby comes, it might be better to sell." I sat up. "That doesn't sound like him." Lauren gave me a pitying look. "Maya, I know you love him, but people change when money gets involved." That sentence hit me harder than it should have. Because Grandma's house was mine, but Ethan had always been respectful about it. He never pressured me to sell. In fact, he had told me we could keep it as a future home or a rental, whatever I wanted. Still, the damage was done. That night I asked him directly, "Did you say we should sell the lake house?" He looked stunned. "No." Lauren stood in the hallway listening, arms crossed, already prepared to look offended on my behalf. Ethan turned slowly toward her. "Did you tell her that?" Lauren looked away. "I just repeated what I heard." "From who?" She didn't answer. I should have demanded more right then. I should have made her explain herself. But instead I got overwhelmed, started crying, and Ethan came toward me. Lauren stepped back and muttered, "See? This is what I mean. She gets emotional and then he acts like the victim." That was the moment I noticed the expression on Ethan's face. It wasn't anger. It was concern. Not for himself. For me. He looked at me as if he knew I was being pulled in 2 directions and didn't know how to save me from either one. The next morning he bought a small security camera system. He didn't make a speech about it. He didn't accuse Lauren. He simply told me he wanted a little extra protection because our neighborhood had had a few break-ins, and with the baby coming, he wanted to make sure the front and living room were covered. I thought he was being practical. He did not tell Lauren. He also did not tell my mother. He only told me, "If something keeps happening when I'm not in the room, I want proof." I remember being irritated by that. It sounded paranoid. Now I would give anything to go back and apologize for that irritation. The camera sat quietly above our bookshelf for 3 days. 3 days. And in those 3 days, Lauren got even bolder. She began coming over while Ethan was at work and helping me rearrange the nursery. She told me Ethan had probably spent too much on the baby furniture and that maybe I should manage the budget myself. She started making comments like, "If anything happened and you needed to live somewhere else, you could always stay with Mom." And "Men get weird when babies are involved." Then she did something that made my skin crawl. She asked me, while folding baby blankets in the nursery, "Have you ever thought about what would happen if Ethan wasn't around?" I stared at her. "What does that mean?" She shrugged, eyes on the blanket. "Nothing bad. I just mean, women need a backup plan." That evening, I told Ethan, and for the first time I watched his jaw tighten. He sat down across from me and said, "Maya, I need you to hear me very carefully. Your sister is not helping you. She is isolating you." I crossed my arms over my stomach. "You sound crazy." He nodded once, as if he expected that. "Maybe. But humor me. Did Lauren ever have a reason to want me out of this house?" I didn't answer. He looked at me hard. "Did she ever ask about the lake house?" That made me hesitate. Because, yes, she had. So often. Too casually. He leaned back in the chair. "I think she wants you emotionally dependent on her. On your mother. On anyone but me." I shook my head. "You think everything is some kind of scheme?" "I think," he said evenly, "that she knows exactly what she's doing." I wanted to argue, but then Lauren's name lit up on my phone. She was texting me from the driveway. "Come outside. It's important." I stood there for a moment, then looked at Ethan. "She's here." He closed his eyes for a second, like he was trying not to lose his temper. "Go get the door. I'll be right behind you." I found Lauren standing by the car with red eyes and one hand on her chest like she had run a mile. "Come with me," she said. "I need to tell you something before he gets to you." "Before who gets to me?" Her voice dropped. "Ethan." My heart thudded. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded paper. "I saw this in his car." I took it from her hands. It was a hotel receipt. My vision blurred for 1 second. A hotel receipt. It showed a room booked 2 towns over. For the previous Thursday night. My name wasn't on it. His was. Lauren's mouth trembled with fake concern. "I didn't want to say anything in front of your mom." I looked up slowly. "What is this?" She shook her head sadly. "I think you know." No, I did not know. But I was scared enough to feel like I did. Ethan appeared behind me on the porch. He saw the paper in my hand and went still. "I didn't stay there," he said. Lauren spun toward him. "You're unbelievable." He held up both hands. "That receipt is fake." "Fake?" she repeated. "Do you hear yourself?" He looked at me. "Maya, that room number is 1 digit off from a conference hotel my company uses. I was there for a work training. I never stayed overnight. I came home." Lauren gasped as if offended by his nerve. But this time I noticed something she hadn't expected. Ethan wasn't defensive. He was ready. "Open the camera feed," he said to me quietly. I blinked. "What?" "Please." Lauren's eyes flicked to him. I walked inside on unsteady legs, opened the app on my phone, and my stomach turned when I saw the living room footage. There she was. Lauren. The camera had captured everything. Not just the argument from earlier. Not just the hotel receipt exchange. It had caught the real thing. It had caught Lauren standing alone in our living room 2 nights before, going through Ethan's jacket pockets. It had caught her taking his wallet. It had caught her in our bedroom with his phone, typing something furiously. It had caught her opening my medicine cabinet and moving one of my pill bottles. And it had caught her laughing on the couch while speaking on the phone in a voice I had never heard before. Cold and sharp and nothing like the sister I thought I knew. I held my breath and kept watching. On the screen, Lauren was saying, "She'll believe anything if I say it with a straight face. I just need 1 more week." My knees buckled. Ethan grabbed my elbow before I hit the floor. Lauren's face changed in an instant. Not just fear, recognition. She knew. "You installed a camera," she said, her voice suddenly hard. Ethan stepped in front of me. "You gave me a reason." My hands trembled so badly I almost dropped the phone. "What is this?" Lauren's lips parted. For the first time since this started, she had nothing polished to say. Ethan spoke first. "Play the rest." I scrolled. The footage moved forward to last night, when Lauren had come in after midnight because she claimed she forgot her keys. She had not gone to the guest room. She had gone straight to the kitchen. She had stood there in the dark and opened the file drawer where we kept important papers. There, in the pale light of the camera, she had pulled out Grandma's estate documents. My mouth went dry. Then she had made a phone call. Her voice on the recording was low, almost cheerful. "She's tired enough to sign anything right now," she said. "Once I get her away from him, the house is as good as mine." I stopped breathing. The room around me felt too small. Ethan shut his eyes. Lauren turned pale. My mother's voice came from behind us. "What house?" She had arrived some time during the last few minutes, drawn in by the sound of raised voices. My father was right behind her. I turned slowly. This was no longer a private lie. This was the whole family standing in the wreckage. Lauren looked around wildly, hunting for a way out, then latched onto the only defense she had left. "She's overreacting," she snapped at me. "You don't understand what's at stake." "What's at stake?" I whispered. Her eyes flashed. "That house is valuable. The land alone is worth a fortune. Grandma was never fair. She left it to you because she thought you were the good daughter. But everyone knows you can't even manage your own life without him." There it was. The truth. Not the whole truth, of course. Not yet. But enough. My mother stared at her. Lauren. Lauren's chest rose and fell quickly now. Her mask was cracking apart. "I was trying to protect this family," she said. But the words sounded rehearsed even to her own ears. He would have taken her away. He would have sold everything. I would have had to watch you all lose what Grandma left behind. Ethan barked out a laugh. "You forged texts, stole papers, planted lies, and tried to turn her against me for the sake of protecting the family?" Lauren whipped around. "You think you're innocent? You think I didn't know what kind of man you were?" "I think," Ethan said, his voice low and steady, "that you found out I kept copies of every suspicious thing you did." He pulled his phone from his pocket and tapped the screen. My breath hitched when I saw the list. Screenshots, bank alerts, message logs, location history. He had been building his own case. Not to shame her, to protect me. He looked at me, and his voice softened. "I didn't tell you because I wanted you to see it for yourself. I didn't want you to feel forced into choosing sides before you had the truth." I pressed a hand to my mouth. That was when the last piece fell into place. Lauren had not only been lying about Ethan, she had been moving money. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. She had used my trust account access to create a temporary family expense transfer, claiming it was to pay for nursery furniture and medical bills. She had used my phone once when I was asleep to approve a link I never meant to approve. She had even tried to have my mother added as a joint contact on the lake house paperwork. Not because she loved my mother, because she wanted control. She had been telling people Ethan was unstable so that, if I got overwhelmed, I would lean on her, not him. And if I leaned on her long enough, she could steer the whole inheritance through my hands and into hers. It was beautiful in the ugliest way. Careful, calculated, patient. My mother stared at Lauren like she was seeing a stranger. "Tell me that isn't true." Lauren laughed once, sharp and brittle. "You're all acting like I'm some criminal." My father's voice finally cut through. "You used your sister's pregnancy to steal from her." That hit harder than anything else. Lauren's face twisted. "I did what I had to do." "No," I said, and my voice came out stronger than I expected. "You did what you wanted to do." She turned to me, furious now, and all the sweetness was gone. "You have no idea what it's like being the one everyone overlooks." I stared at her, tears burning my eyes. "So, you tried to destroy my marriage?" She pointed at Ethan. He was always in the way. That sentence hung in the room like smoke. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Even Lauren seemed startled by her own honesty. Then my mother said, in the quietest voice I had ever heard from her, "Get out." Lauren's head snapped toward her. "Mom!" No. My mother's face had gone pale, but her voice was steady now. "You are not taking another step in this house. You are not speaking to your sister like that again. And you are certainly not stealing from her while she is carrying your niece." Lauren looked stunned, as if the ground had shifted beneath her. I should have felt victory in that moment. Instead, I felt grief, because no matter how badly she had hurt me, she was still my sister. And that kind of betrayal does not leave cleanly. It leaves bruises where nobody can see them. Lauren grabbed her purse and spat. Fine. Keep your perfect little family. Let's see how long it lasts. Then she walked out. Not gracefully, not in tears, just angry and hard and cornered. The door slammed so loud I flinched. For a moment, nobody moved. Then my knees gave out. Ethan caught me before I hit the floor, and this time I didn't pull away. I sobbed into his shoulder until I couldn't breathe properly. Not because I was only sad, because I was ashamed, because I had doubted him. Because while he had been trying to protect me, I had been sitting beside my sister listening to her poison. Because I had nearly lost the one person who had never once used my fear against me. Over the next few days, the truth came out in layers. It turned out Lauren had been drowning in debt after a failed business venture she never told us about. She had been hiding it behind expensive clothes, polished smiles, and all that sudden support she gave me. She thought the lake house would help her. She thought the trust would help her. And most of all, she thought if she could separate me from Ethan, I would become weak enough to hand things over. She was wrong about all of it. Ethan contacted the bank. The lawyer was notified. The unauthorized transfers were reversed where possible, and the rest became part of a formal investigation. The family lawyer also reviewed the estate papers and found the attempts to alter access rights. My mother had been angry enough by then that she refused to defend Lauren anymore. My father, who almost never raised his voice, told her she could not stay in the family home. Lauren had to move out of the apartment she had been living in after we froze the shared family account she had used. And then came the part I did not expect. She called me. Not from a place of honesty, from a place of panic. I answered because I was foolish enough to still hope for my sister. Her voice was tight. Maya, you have to fix this. I sat in the nursery, one hand resting on my stomach. Fix what? You can tell them it was a misunderstanding. I let out a breath. There is video. A pause. Then smaller. You really kept that? Yes. Another silence. Then she whispered, I was only trying to help myself. I closed my eyes. For a second, I remembered her brushing my hair when we were kids. I remembered sleepovers and secrets, and laughing so hard we couldn't breathe. And then I remembered the recording of her saying she would get my house if she played me right. Lauren, I said, my voice quiet and exhausted. You didn't help yourself. You tried to use me. She started crying then, but I didn't feel triumphant about it, just tired. Do you think I wanted this? She asked. No, I said. I think you chose it. She said nothing after that. The line went dead. The baby came 2 weeks later on a rainy Tuesday morning. Ethan drove like a man possessed, holding my hand at every red light, apologizing every time I winced, telling me over and over that I was okay, that I was safe, that he was right there. Lauren did not come to the hospital. My mother did. She sat in the chair beside my bed after the birth and cried quietly while holding the tiny hand of the daughter I named Nora. I chose Nora because my grandmother's name was Eleanor, and I wanted something from her to live on in this new little life. My mother kissed Nora's forehead and whispered, I should have seen it sooner. I looked at her, too tired to pretend. Yes, she nodded, accepting it. I know. That was the first honest thing she had said to me in months. It didn't fix everything. Nothing fixed everything. Lauren still faced consequences. The trust investigation took time. The money she had taken could not be erased with one apology. The family had to sit through difficult conversations, legal letters, and the shame of learning how close we had come to losing everything because one person wanted control more than love. She lost her standing with most of the family. She lost access to the accounts. She lost the house she thought she could claim. She lost the soft image she had spent years building. And eventually, she lost the belief that she could always smile her way out of damage. That was her karma. Real, slow, and impossible to decorate. As for Ethan, he never once said, I told you so. He could have. God knows he could have. Instead, he stayed steady while I healed. He took night feedings without complaint. He held Nora while I slept. He never used my guilt against me. Never brought up the times I had doubted him, except to say, one quiet evening, next time something feels wrong, please come to me first. I cried when he said it. Because I knew what he meant. Not a promise that life would be perfect, just a promise that we would stand on the same side of the truth. Months later, when the house on the lake was finally secure again and the paperwork was settled, I went there with Nora in my arms. The water was still. The porch boards creaked the same way they had when I was a little girl visiting Grandma in the summer. The air smelled like pine and rain, and something older than grief. I stood there holding my daughter and thought about how close I had come to losing not just my marriage, but my own ability to trust my instincts. Lauren had almost taught me to doubt what was right in front of my face. That was the deepest wound of all. Not the stolen money, not the lies, not the public humiliation. It was how skillfully she had tried to make me feel crazy for noticing the truth. But she failed, because I did notice, eventually, and when I finally did, I had the courage to look. I still see Lauren sometimes from a distance around town. We do not speak, not because I hate her, but because some damage needs distance more than discussion. She looks smaller now, less polished, like a person who ran too hard at a door and found out it would not open for charm alone. Maybe one day she will become someone different. Maybe not. I have stopped waiting around for that answer. What matters is this. My daughter was born into a home built on truth, not manipulation. Ethan is still my husband. My mother knows better now. My father never lets anyone forget how easily we were fooled. And the house my grandmother left me is still mine. Not because I fought for property, but because I fought for clarity. People like Lauren always think they can create chaos quietly, behind closed doors, while smiling at the dinner table. They think if they keep their voice sweet enough, no one will hear the knife in it. But a hidden camera doesn't care how sweet a person sounds. It only records what they do when they think nobody is watching. And when I finally played back the truth, the whole family saw her real face. That was the night the mask came off. That was the night my husband was proven innocent. That was the night my sister lost every lie she had been wearing. And that was the night I learned something I will never forget. A peace built on pretending is not peace at all. It is just a silence waiting to break.